From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, I'm Evan Smith, and these are your news headlines for 12 p.m. An update is expected today for the violent crime spree which took place in the Tri-Cities yesterday afternoon. A statement from Coquitlam RCMP says officers were called to an armed robbery at a car dealership in Port Coquitlam just before 4 p.m. Tuesday. Police say 4 suspects fled in a stolen vehicle, and responding officers were involved in an exchange of gunfire before the stolen sedan crashed along Highway Number 1 in Coquitlam and the 4 fled. One man was arrested a short time later, while a second person allegedly hijacked a car and was eventually taken into custody in Surrey. The police statement says neither of the arrested suspects nor any responding police officers were hurt in the exchange, but it's unknown if the 2 outstanding suspects have injuries. Corporal Alexa Hodgins says the response Tuesday was dynamic, with multiple crime scenes, and the police are actively searching for the remaining suspects and urge anyone with a cell phone or dashcam video to speak to the Coquitlam RCMP. A woman killed in an apparent murder-suicide in Prince Rupert has been identified as an employee of the BC's Ministry of Children and Family Development. Police say the shooting at the Ocean Center Mall was an isolated incident, and the gunman, age 44, and his 52-year-old victim knew each other, but have not said how. A statement from Premier David Eby's office says the shooting was a violent act committed against someone who worked to serve local children and families. The first 2 pieces of legislation proposed by Premier David Eby have passed second reading and returned to the legislature today as he follows through on his promise to act quickly on key issues facing British Columbia. The Housing Supply Act and Building and Strata Statutes Amendment Act both passed Tuesday after time limits were imposed on debate. New Democrats and the 2 Green Party members voted in favor, while opposition Liberal leader Kevin Falcon and the other 25 BC Liberal members opposed the bills. The legislation aims to increase housing supply with measures that will end several rental restrictions and have the potential to force local governments to meet housing growth targets. The Public Health Agency of Canada declared an influenza pandemic last week, despite not having data from British Columbia. Experts say this is unfortunate, but not surprising. Jay Zebinel with more.
The latest Flu Watch report from the Public Health Agency of Canada shows no data for BC. Despite not having BC data, an influenza epidemic was declared. Dr. Lynn Filiatro from the Protect Our Province BC says this is not surprising.
BC has one of the most egregious data reporting in terms of provinces, meaning that we have the least transparent, the least available, and the more data fudging of any single province.
BCIT News reached out to the Provincial Health Services Authority and received a one-line response and quote, BC is collecting influenza data and will resume submitting influenza data to PHAC for the Flu Watch Bulletin in the next week or 2. Jay Zabanel, 1680, The Crow.
And now our reporter Jay Zebinel joins us. Jay, what is the importance of having this data available?
Evan, Dr. Filiatro explained that our public health officials in BC have outsourced public health to the citizens. So as individuals, we're now responsible to determine what is our risk and how we should behave accordingly. The missing part here is that they're not providing the data so the citizens know the risk in their area and actually make the right decisions. Evan?
And so what are they suggesting that the public does?
Well, the group says we cannot wait on the government of British Columbia to do what's right for British Columbians, and they are asking citizens to start masking again and wear the proper masks. Evan?
Thank you, Jay. A public inquiry into Ottawa's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act is not allowed to hear the legal advice it relied on to trigger the never-before-used legislation. During today's testimony, Attorney General David Lametti sidestepped multiple questions, citing solicitor-client privilege, which his government refused to waive. Lametti told the commission the government has been clear about why it chose to invoke the act to clear last winter's Freedom Convoy.
As for the process that got us to those conclusions, I'm going to leave that to the final argument of my lawyers. That pushes me into an area where I can't really answer the question without infringing on solicitor-client privilege.
Lametti testified he doesn't view the demonstration that was staged in Ottawa as a legitimate protest, and instead of calling those involved protesters, he corrected himself to refer to them as occupiers. Now in international news, a Canadian-Israeli teenager died in blast that went off this morning in Jerusalem. The seminary Aryeh Chupek attended confirms he died on his way to school. Rabbi Raphael Rockmill, who works at the school, says Aryeh woke up this morning contemplating on if he should even go.
He decided he wants to come, even he got up a little miserable, but he decided he wanted to come because he loved the place. He loved our place because, like I said, we are a family.
The school says it will miss the teenager, who was always smiling. A teen shot by a San Antonio police officer as he put his car in reverse while eating a hamburger has been released from the hospital. A lawyer for Eric Cantu's family says the 17-year-old went home nearly 2 months after he was shot in a McDonald's parking lot. Cantu's parents say they're overjoyed at his progress in the past 2 weeks, but that he still has a long road to recovery. Cantu was shot on October 2nd by Officer James Brennan. Brennan was fired and charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault by a public official. Ukraine's energy ministry says the vast majority of electric consumers have lost power after Russian strikes.
Russia's targeted Ukraine's battered power infrastructure with another barrage of strikes, forcing the country's last 3 fully functioning nuclear power plants to disconnect from the grid, leaving the vast majority of electricity consumers without power, the Energy Ministry says. In a Facebook post, the ministry adds, power workers are working to restore supplies, but given the extent of the damage, we will need time. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
And now transitioning to World Cup news, Canada vs. Belgium is currently underway. It is the first World Cup match played by Canada since 1986. The Canadians came into this game as underdogs playing against a Belgian squad which are ranked as the second best national team by FIFA. Alphonso Davies had his penalty saved by Thibaut Courtois in the 10th minute, and now Belgium is up 1-0 at the half thanks to a goal by Michy Batshuayi. Japan upsetted 11th-ranked Germany in a come-behind victory this morning, taking the game 2-1. Substitutes Ritsu Doan and Takuma Asano scored late goals. Both Doan and Asano play for German clubs. This was the first competitive meeting between the two nations. In an early matchup with Croatia and Morocco squaring off, both teams were held scoreless. Morocco were underdogs as they were facing the 2018 World Cup runners-up. The match was already the 3rd goalless draw of the tournament, all coming in the space of only 24 hours. There were only 2 attempts on target from both teams in Al Bayt Stadium. The second Group E matchup of the day has already finished. Underdogs Costa Rica were facing against the national powerhouse Spain. The game kicked off at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and finished at 7-0. Dani Olmo was able to bag a goal in the 11th minute. Ferran Torres was able to bag 2 goals in the matchup in a trouncing that finished 7-0. The Canucks face off against a strong Colorado Avalanche team tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The Avalanche come into the game boasting a 3-game win streak. The Canucks will be trying to get back to winning coming off a loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now for basketball, the Toronto Raptors will be coming into their game tonight against the Brooklyn Nets severely beat up. Key players such as Pascal Siakam, Otto Porter, and Precious Achiuwa are all out while Chris Boucher, Gary Trent, and Scotty Barnes are all listed as game-time decisions. The Raptors may have a hard time against Brooklyn Nets with these injuries. Kyrie Irving is back for the second game after his suspension was lifted. The Raptors last played in an overtime loss coming at the hands of Eastern Conference rivals, the Atlanta Hawks. In NFL news, second-year quarterback Zach Wilson has been benched by the New York Jets ahead of the team's game against the Chicago Bears on Sunday. Coach Robert Saleh announced the decision after evaluations and discussions with his coaching staff. Wilson was severely disappointing in his last game against rival New England, going only 9 for 22 with a minimal 77 yards passing. Backup Mike White is currently set to play Sunday. The Houston Texans are following the same trend as the New York Jets, as Davis Mills has lost his starting position after going 19 for 33 for 169 yards and 2 picks against the Washington Commanders. Kyle Allen is now set to start Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. Today is forecasted to be nothing but clouds, with a high of 8 degrees and a low of 4. Expect more cloud coverage tomorrow. These have been your news headlines for 12 p.m. on 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Siggi-Kane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
Hello, I'm your host Maham Hashmi for this episode of Companion Call. I'm going to be talking about a topic today that is a little bit hard to discuss. It's focused around domestic abuse and it's a sensitive topic, but I have two guests that will be kind of explaining it and explaining why it happens because it's something I feel like that doesn't get talked about enough. So I'm now joined by Sean Hogan, who is the former head of marketing for mental health facility. Hello, Sean.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I'm also joined by Kaylee Gillard.
Yes, hi. Thanks for having us as well.
Thank you. And Kaylee is a former domestic abuse mentor. All right, so we're gonna be, I guess, diving in now. One thing that I've noticed is a lot of people struggle to understand why women find themselves in these type of situations, like toxic relationships or abusive relationships that are emotionally and or physically abusive. So I want to just see what you guys think are the top reasons why women usually find themselves in those situations.
It's a good question. One thing I've observed, it's obviously a spectrum, but it seems to be that financial abuse is often in the situation wherein the partner has made his girlfriend or wife financially dependent on him, or it's just kind of flowed in that way. Yep. Imbalances of power. Another thing that I observe often is, mental health both on the woman's side and on the men's side if it's a hetero partnership, which often is very deep rooted, so it's probably something that has been in the female's life for a long time, and I think there's an element of I don't want to call it comfort, but the female maybe has had someone in their lives who have had similar mental health issues, so they're used to it, they're used to the energy of it, and maybe want to help the other person in their struggles, which kind of can create a codependency at times.
The toxic traits don't put up the red flags that they would in say if someone who's grown up with a very healthy, loving family, and not to say it doesn't happen to those who grew up in a healthy family, but it does tend to, you see it more often with women who have grown up with maybe the toxic traits were those, a little more aggressive
by their parents.
Yeah, and it just isn't something that puts up a red flag for you because it seems so normal, and maybe that's even a degree less than what they had at home. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you see, where you see women stay in a relationship like that more often than not, or even end up into something like that because it just, reflects what their home life was originally.
Mm-hmm. And I think a third category I've seen, which actually surprised me, maybe this one is less common, but someone who has started in a really, what they think is a healthy relationship with someone, and abuse increases over the course of time, where they're, caught off guard, but by that time they're caught off guard, they're traumatized and in this very messy situation that they don't, it's just become very emotionally entangled.
And it could be that it's years down the line that all of these things have now started to compile, and they're really looking at the big picture, and maybe there's kids involved, there's a lot more of the family aspect. Now you're looking at actually leaving and a separation of that relationship, versus someone who, is a single woman in a relationship and you become financially dependent. Yes, it's really hard to leave, but in that third category, there's a lot more to it, and they could be staying, thinking that it's the better option for their family or their children. But
I think that the abuser also either consciously or subconsciously knows what's happening, and it's abuse tactics which create a dependency, or I do really love this person and they don't actually mean it. This is just a moment, like he's just having an outburst or something, and maybe 80% of the time or 70% of the time the relationship is fine, but then there's 30% where things
the highs are high, the lows are low, is what I always say.
And that's very common with people who have bipolar disorder.
So
did you want to touch more on the bipolar disorder, and because a lot of toxic relationships and abusive relationships, that's a common mental health issue that usually the abuser has?
So I think there's a few things when someone has bipolar disorder. There's the godlike confidence that comes out, which can be attractive. There's the highs and the mania, where the person is a lot of fun, maybe the life of the party, perhaps taking the person on exciting trips. And then I think on the lower end of the spectrum, it's usually outbursts of anger, either low depression where they don't want to go to bed. What I've witnessed the most is the anger that comes in the lower serotonin stages.
You see them, you want to help them when they're in those low moments, because the high moments you've built this great relationship that you see, and then there are low moments where they're mad and angry, and you're like, we can help them. I mean, that's the more it happens, the more that pattern goes on, and the farther in you go into that relationship. So
I think that, and there's hope, right? This is only going to happen a few times. I think for me, the biggest learning when I understood what bipolar disorder was, no, this is actually how the person is until he or she decides to get help for themselves. And even with help and medication, it can be a pretty persistent thing. My understanding is that these more severe mental illnesses present about 18, and if they're not supported with therapy or healthy lifestyle choices, even medication, it only gets worse.
For sure. Do you think that women that are in those situations, it's also due to a lack of learning about these mental illnesses, so they're not able to identify it and they kind of think it's normal?
I don't know if it's about the actual mental health of the abuser and what it is that they are diagnosed with, because in my experience it wasn't a diagnosed form of bipolar that the person I was with. I would say an extreme narcissism, and that word is thrown around a lot at what we hear in the media and podcasts and all that kind of stuff right now. It's brought up a lot, but I would just say in general, you're just involved with that person, and no matter what their title is and what they're going through,
you have a bond.
Yeah. And then when it comes down to it, I wouldn't say that learning and knowing more about that particular disorder is something that would help you stay out of it. I think it's learning what red flags are, setting your own boundaries, and learning deep within yourself is the only thing to keep you out of something like that. So
that's a good question. How do you support a friend going through it?
Yeah, because you can't.
I've been the friend and I've been in the relationship. I've been on both sides, and I think when you're in it, it's like a it's like a wormhole. You can't really see outside of it.
Well, and when friends are trying to get you out, you almost become defensive. The person you're with is separating you from your friends, and the people that are trying to get you away from them, they start to distance you from them. Anyone they see as a threat. So then all of a sudden, your friends and family who might be able to be there for you and supportive and understanding that this is wrong, you become defensive towards them now because the person you're with is putting that bug in your ear that they're not really good people, and they've totally manipulated you and changed that situation. So when
or they're not really your friends.
Yeah, and so when your friends are there and saying something to you, you become defensive of your partner, and then you talk less about what's going on, and you hide more. And so I think that's another big aspect, is it's really hard on the friend side to know what to say, what to do, and how to help. But being supportive and asking the questions that causes that person to look inwards versus telling them what they should be feeling or thinking. Asking them questions and getting them thinking about it. Getting that person, for me, it was journaling, and I didn't, have the means to be going to counseling and all that kind of stuff, but I did a lot of work of studying it myself, and there's a lot of free,
resources.
Out there, and when you're in it, you know better. It just has to be the right time to be able to get it back out.
Yeah, I think so.
So.
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that,
Sean? I think keeping, as the friend, it can be really frustrating, right? And it's but keeping the relationship there is more important, I think, than giving up on your friend or something like that. And knowing, I think it's hard when it's more severe, and if you know it's severe, I think that can be really painful. So setting your own boundaries around it, I suppose, but keeping that line of trust there and that line of communication there, and allowing the friend to know that you're going to be there for them no matter what, I think is important.
Yeah. It's having that friend group that will really come into play when the time comes. And it's like dealing with someone with an addiction. When you look at it, it's the same idea. That addiction has a hold on that person, whatever that addiction may be. Could be love, and actually that's another great resource when you are a person. I have people in my family who have gone through the 12 steps, and in support of that person, I decided to do the 12 steps with them. And I didn't do it for alcohol, but I did it for love. And that was a huge thing to realize that, you need to cut yourself off from the addiction of love. And so looking at any need, any desires, anything that resembles that addiction.
Would it be an addiction to distorted love? Because is that love? It's
that feeling. It's the search for
companionship.
Not even companionship, but just that
connection.
You're looking to fill a void that's there, and whether, and that's why I say in all of this, the biggest thing is you need to do work on yourself. And I know that's no matter what, the number one thing is journaling and whatever it might be that causes you to look inwards and face those things that you may not want to face and come to terms with about your own self.
I feel that's an interesting concept, though, how I've evolved to understanding maybe lowercase love to capital case love. Oh, sorry. When I have been in abusive relationships, the way that it felt in the beginning was much different than how it felt in healthier relationships. There's fireworks, there's sparks, there's just a different energy to it. And the way I understand that is there's a resonance in that person where you are relating to trauma that is familiar. So for me, it was people who showed me hot and cold love. They were all about me one day and not about the next. And that was very similar to how my mom showed me love. So it was familiar. The person was often troubled or had a form of struggle that I wanted to help. And those relationships never last. They were like, you know, what is the saying? Like, burn hard, die fast, or something like that.
Yeah, they do for sure burn out. And I think you went through your domestic abuse before you and I were friends, and that was, you know, a significant amount of time now, and I can totally see the difference in who you are as a person now, which is the great part about the fact that we know each other so well. Me being a little bit more recent, it has takes time. It's some time, and when you find a really good person in a healthy relationship, it's learning that, like, those sparks and fireworks aren't. That's not
sometimes that's a bad sign.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, someone who's come from the past not great relationships. I'm like, you know, where's this excitement? I need it. And I'm like, wow, that's not okay. Like, that's the thing that I need to work on, that otherwise will attract the next narcissistic or toxic relationship that if I don't get a handle on.
I think, like, the difference in the person that I'm with now, and we've been together for 6 years, there was still excitement, and there's still those butterflies, but it wasn't like, and you know, he might be like, what, it wasn't like fireworks? it was like fireworks, but I can't describe it. There was all of that, but a feeling of safety. And my heart, and my heart was still traumatized from everything it had experienced before, but there was still a knowing that this person was safe. I could trust him. He would never intentionally hurt me or put me down or make me feel like he didn't love me. Like, I just knew that. Even when I would get insecure and, you know, some of the old stuff would come back up because of your distrust that has been developed in the past, there was always a deep knowing that that's just me. That's what I've experienced. That's in my head. I trust him.
Yeah, comforting yourself. Yeah, and that's exactly it. There's looking for the good in the relationship, and when you're in a bad relationship, it's the love bombing that comes along with it as well. There's another word that's thrown out there, and you know, it's the crazy trips and the adventures and the best. We're always giving you the best, and it's like, well, that's just another thing that they're using to get a hold on you, because one day they're gonna use that against you. You know, I gave you that, I did that for you, and now I'm gonna use that as a way of controlling you in the end. So it's learning how to be in a normal, healthy relationship and not bringing your past experiences into that one as well, or being like open about the communication of it.
I think it's gonna come in. This is just unavoidable. You would have had to probably do years of work, and even if you do years of work, it's still gonna come up. It's just how the body responds, unless I don't know, maybe you're someone who truly can just let shit go. I only know a few of those. Oh my god, I just lost my train of thought.
But it's learning to communicate that.
To be able to communicate your partner, but if you're with someone you can trust, hey, this is coming up for me right now. I feel like this, and allowing that person to, what's the word? Like, soothe your fears or reassure you. I've been in relationships where those insecurities would come up, and I would voice them, and I would be put down for them. You're needy, you're this, you need to whatever, which makes you feel worse, and then you continue spiraling.
Or it's all in your head. You're you know, if you bring up something about an insecurity, it's probably when you're in the bad relationship, it probably is true.
Yeah.
And that's where you now bring that into a good relationship, and I have to remind myself, being like, that's not true, that's not how this person would be to me. That's just my past acting up right now, and I need to self-soothe, but I can also learn to communicate that with a new relationship.
And I think allowing your partner to soothe you too sometimes, in reason. If it's happening all the time, okay, you need to, like, straighten your shit out.
Yeah, do a little bit more work. But yeah, it's having the communication, but also the understanding of yourself and saying, I am working on this. And I appreciate you as my partner supporting me and helping me in these times of needs. And I will continue to work on myself and continue to grow. But right now, like, this is the
Where
way
I'm at.
Yeah, this is what I need from you. And a really good partner, you know, will be there for you, but they won't use those insecurities against you. And
totally,
that's something that does happen in an unhealthy relationship. So
we're at we're past our 20-minute mark, but do you, like, how did you guys want to wrap this up? Like, what else do you think you want to leave the audience with?
Leave.
If it doesn't feel right,
if you don't feel safe,
it may be hard, but just do it. Look at your resources.
Ask your friends if it means relying on your friends or family for a bit. It's worth it.
The rock bottom that you feel like you're in then at that moment may get worse.
Depending on yourself is always the safest bet.
Yeah. So I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys so much. This has been your episode of Companion Call.
first started playing music with Charlie, specifically punk music. Love punk rock. And then one day we were like, oh, let's go see the Pixies, because they're coming to Vancouver. They're playing with Weezer, another 90s alternative band. Afterwards, Charlie came up to me and was like, dude, like, we should start a band. Like, we should actually try and do music. That'd be so cool. Like, let's do it.
All right. All right, this one's called Slap a Bye, Baby. He said, babe, I want to be in that ass like a parasite. How do you think my touch is what heaven's like? How do you know, like, they scream when I go for the throat? How do you know what it's like to watch blood pour on my nose?
And so we go through that first quarantine, and it was a search for a drummer, because it was me and Zach on guitar. I was doing most of the singing, Charlie was on bass.
I was learning guitar and Lars was learning all kinds of instruments, so we just kind of messed around. And then it kind of got stale after a while because we couldn't really work off each other in that particular arrangement.
And we were just like desperate for someone who would be able to play drums, and then we'd be good to go, right? And so probably the most musical person in our grade at the time was a certain man named Knight O'Connor, who played guitar, played bass, and played the drums.
So, I mean, I knew everybody from high school. I knew Lars, Zach, and Charlie. And I knew that they were playing music together. And I knew that there was a party coming up that Charlie was throwing. So I went to that. And I managed to corner Lars and Charlie. And I was like, hey, you know, I know how to play drums. And I heard that you guys are down a drummer. I can play drums for you if you'd like that.
We started going, and Knight is a pretty rough drummer. And it was fun, but we were like, okay, this is a good place for this band to start. Like, this will work, we just gotta give it time and learn stuff. And we were like, all right, like, let's take a little break, right?
And then we figured it out, because Knight's a way better bassist than he is a drummer. Lars is a way better drummer than he is guitarist. I moved to keyboard because I'm much better at that than bass. And Zach stayed on guitar because he's so good.
And then we like played the best I'd ever played up at that point in any group setting ever. Played some of the most fun music, rough and raw, but exciting and new and fun. And we knew we would never go back to the old instruments. From that point on, we were like stuck in those spots. But I'd say our biggest influence was coming from Pink Floyd. 'Cause we adored Pink Floyd as the typical high school stoners we were. We loved Pink Floyd, and we'd sit there and listen to Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall and dedicate hours to it and stuff. You know, way more important than schoolwork at the time. You know, you gotta get your listens in on some Pink Floyd records, you know. But as to who I would compare us to and who we sound like the most, well, we get a lot of people who say we sound like the Doors.
I've heard from a lot of people that we apparently sound like the Doors in terms of our musical arrangement.
Which is funny because I'm not even that big of a Doors fan. But Charlie's a massive Doors fan, and once again, that's where the Doors got their sound, was through those keys and stuff.
I don't think a lot of people have an answer for Knight's singing. He kind of just sings like Knight, he just shouts. I like it.
As far as genre goes, Lars and I came up with psychedelic funk and punk.
So a lot of bands, whether or not they're a one-hit wonder or whatever, a lot of bands have that song, like the song, their song. It's a song that people say, oh yeah, they sing blank. For Queen, it's probably Bohemian Rhapsody. For Led Zeppelin, you have to say it's Stairway to Heaven. Like Nirvana's It Smells Like Teen Spirit. So if I asked you, what's your song? What's the song for Big Long Baby?
Bugs.
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 Bugs?
But who gives a shit about insects?
I wrote Bugs about drug use and how it kind of affected me and how, there's that blasé attitude. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Roaches in my lung, roaches in my heart, kickstart. But it's about drugs, and it's got that kind of like evil feeling to it, about how it's super fast paced, and then it's, you're getting hit with it.
Give a shit about insects? Think you can't do what? We all who takes care of Terraria? Give a shit about insects? Think you can't do what?
That was the easiest song we've ever written too. And I think we finished that song in like three band practices. We actually like completed that song with the words, with everything. Yeah, it was by far the easiest song we've ever written. And the most excited I think we've ever been writing a song. It was very fun to write that one. Because we were like, fuck, this is cool.
So I remember playing it, and I just sat there for, must have been like half an hour just trying to work it out. And then I got like the verse chorus down, and then I wrote this like slow, heavy part. And I was like, this is great. So I recorded it and I sent it to the band, and they're like, that's fucking awesome. Yeah, I just really channeled how I was feeling into the words and made a singable melody that still kind of felt punky and had that attitude. And then I brought the words into practice, and then we played it together, and it was done. That was, I think, probably one of the first songs that we sat back and were really proud of.
But yeah, Bugs was like, that was our first and only, thus far, masterpiece that we've made.
So yesterday,
You talked about how this was a drug. You feel like you got your fix today?
Get up, Tom. Get up, Tom. 3. 1. Take 3 tackles. 1. 2. There you go.
It's a grind. It's not for, it takes a special kind of someone to put their body through this for sure. There's nothing else like it. There's no other art form that does what wrestling does. It's part sport. It's part action. It's part drama. So you get a little bit of everything. At least that's what I see. But I also have been hitting the head a lot and I ramble, so.
You know, if you have a type of relationship with him that's like, you know, like mine, developed over the years with him, he's just down. He's just for real, you know? And like, he's just one of the most for real guys in the locker room that obviously I've known for 10 plus years.
I don't know, for me it's like going home. Like it's where I want to be, it's what I want to do. This is my team. This is my second family. This Lionsgate Dojo. Like, this is my crew.
Coaches, students, all that sort of stuff. We all care about, you know, what we got here. You know what I mean? And Tony's the top of the list when it comes to that. Yeah, he's a little bit humble. In a good way, though.
I'm my own worst critic, so I've never considered myself good enough to coach. But people seem to like my classes, so I must be doing okay, right? Charging in? Right there. Okay. As long as you're like in and then sell it for me.
For Tony in particular, like he just loves it, man. He's fully embracing, I guess, that next step, right? Coaching and all that sort of stuff.
Oh no! I hope that one day, like down the road, one of these guys could walk into a promotion wearing the Lionsgate Dojo shirt and only have heard of us like, oh, this guy must be good because he's rocking those colors. You know what I mean? That's my dream. Is like to have this recognized as like Lionsgate Dojo produces quality wrestlers.
Are we doing this? Yeah, we're doing this.
I've said in a lot of interviews and stuff, he's like the reason I've kind of gotten so far because he took me under his wing. I'm so grateful for everything he's taught me, him and Billy Swade both. But yeah, he's one of my my mentors, and I see him like a father figure, man.
2 down.
Yeah.
Go for 3. No. Squatty.
I would like to do. Could we do boom, boom, boom?
Without him, wrestling here, it'd be way worse. It'd be unbearably worse. Like, honestly, without that man here, we might all be screwed. Yeah, fuck, I never thought about it before.
She is a 3-time Vancouver Island Women's Champion. This is Rhea Von Slasher. Like, you know, what they're doing is, you know, it's a very high level physical performance. The risks are very real, and, you know, they're doing that for our entertainment. And, you know, it's I have like such a great deal of respect for what they do, and I respect the art form very much.
We build these moments for you to showcase and test the boundaries. Do what you want tonight. Be safe. That's my only other thing that I say tonight. Thank you for being here. Enjoy Nation Extreme Wrestling and have a fantastic night.
All right, everybody, welcome to NEW5 here at the Harbor Convention Center.
Oh my God. You don't get any higher than that in this building. He can touch the ceiling.
Tony, what goes through your mind before a big match like this?
My match, over and over and over and over and over. That's what goes through my mind. Just my spots over and over and over, repetition. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't fuck up, be safe. What am I doing? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know, there's not a real, there's no fancy metamorphosis or anything. Some of these guys might, tracksuit goes on and
looking fly, man, looking fly.
God look fly.
One fall. Coming to the ring first.
You know, he just loves to entertain, right? And he's going to go out there and he's going to go 100%.
The NEW Tag Team Champions, the Wise Men, Tony Baroni and Billy Swade, already know who the next challengers will be for those tag belts around their waists as we speak. But right now, they have an even tougher test ahead of them, as it's a trios tag match, 3-on-3.
I talk to people, I go, it's like Broadway theater, right? Except that crowds at a Broadway theater can't heckle the performers and stuff, right? Pro wrestling, you can do that.
Smell like pee!
It's the weirdest insult I've ever heard from a fan.
It's the best insult you've ever heard.
I know your face. You're that guy on Twitter.
Yeah! You have the mid-sized power man in Tony Baroni. Beautiful. Baroni up on his shoulders and Coco Flash up on the top rope. What are we going to see here? What a frog splash! B-Boy picking up a big win for the Illa Tribe as they pick up a victory over the NEW Tag Team Champions.
We have a lot of chemistry. He takes care of us. We take a lot of cues from him. We're very well coached. Man, we love Tony, bro. You know what I mean? Like, we can't. I don't know how much, I can't express how much love and admiration and guidance we get from him. I cannot express it.
He still, loves pro wrestling as much as the next young guy does. Definitely a leader, in a lot of ways. Like when I say leader, just like a good dude in the locker room that you can probably ask something. Hey Tony, I need to. You don't meet a lot of guys like that. Not a lot of dudes stick around, especially like in the local scene or whatever. And, there's a little group of us right now. And, it's no surprise that Tony's a part of it. Tony, myself, everybody, wrestlers, crowd, all that sort of stuff. Like, we're all sort of contributing to keeping the community alive.
What a night of matches we saw. What a night of action. Incredible performances right across the board.
From the Broadcast Center at BCIT's Burnaby Campus, this is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, my name is Dennis Shinolu, and this is your sports update to 1 p.m. In Canada's first World Cup game since 1986, they lost in a tight 1-0 match against Belgium, where they controlled most of the game. Star wide man Alphonso Davies did suit up after recovering from his hamstring injury and started the game with a missed penalty kick after a Yannick Carrasco handball in the box. Belgian Michy Batshuayi scored the only goal with a half volley from a lob-through ball. In the earlier slate of games this morning, Croatia and Morocco tied in a competitive match. In a great underdog performance, Japan beat Germany 2-1. Japan was down 1-0 until the final 15 minutes of game time, where Japan put in 2 goals. Both Japanese goal scorers, Ritsu Doan and Takuma Asano, were subbed on and helped drag their team to victory. In the exact opposite of an underdog performance, Spain demolished Costa Rica 7-0, with Ferran Torres knocking 2 goals past Costa Rican keeper Keylor Navas. German players covered their mouths for their team photos before their match against Japan. In play, the team lined up in a traditional formation, Then each of the 11 players covered their mouth with their right hand. German coach Hansi Flick said it was a sign from the team, from us, that FIFA is muzzling us. FIFA has warned that they would penalize players wearing the One Love armband, a symbol for inclusion and diversity. Host nation Qatar has been under heavy international scrutiny with their human rights violations, as well as their laws criminalizing homosexuality. The Canucks face off against reigning Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The Avalanche come to the game boasting a 3-game win streak. The Canucks will be trying to get back to winning form, coming off a 5-4 loss to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquired defenseman Connor Timmins from the Arizona Coyotes in exchange for an AHL player, Curtis Douglas. Timmins is meant to shore up a Toronto defense that's been severely undermanned, especially after Morgan Riley's injury. The Toronto Raptors will be coming into their game tonight against the Brooklyn Nets severely beat up. Key players such as Pascal Siakam, Otto Porter, and Precious Achiuwa are out, while Chris Boucher, Gary Trent, and Scotty Barnes are all listed as game-time decisions. The Raptors may have a hard time against Brooklyn with these injuries. Kyrie Irving is back in play for the Nets after suspension was lifted. The Raptors are on a 3-game point streak, losing to the Atlanta Hawks on Saturday in overtime while beating Detroit and Miami before that. In club soccer news, Pep Guardiola signed a new contract with Manchester City that will have him as head coach until 2025. Since Guardiola came to the Etihad Stadium in 2016, the Catalan manager has helped City win 4 Premier League titles and 9 major trophies. In his City tenure, Guardiola has failed to get the big trophy, the Champions League. NFL Thanksgiving games have been a tradition since the inception of professional football. Going into tomorrow, there's 3 games set. The morning starts with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills going to Ford Field to play the Detroit Lions. In a strange turn of events, the Bills are looking to win in Detroit for the 2nd straight week, after having to play there last Sunday due to extreme snowfall in Buffalo. Next, the Dallas Cowboys host the New York Giants in an NFC East clash. Both teams are 7-3, so this game will decide who is the runner-up in division behind the Philadelphia Eagles. For the primetime game, the New England Patriots travel to Minneapolis to face the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are coming off a blowout loss to the Cowboys, while the Patriots just beat the New York Jets in a tight defensive match. In other NFL news, second-year quarterback Zach Wilson has been benched by the New York Jets ahead of the team's game against the Chicago Bears Sunday. Coach Robert Saleh announced the decision after evaluations and discussion with his coaching staff. Wilson was severely disappointing in his last game against rival New England, going 9 for 22 with only 77 yards passing. Backup Mike White is currently set to play. The Houston Texans are following the Jets' trend and have made the decision to bench their quarterback. Davis Mills has lost his starting position after going 19 for 33, 169 yards, and 2 picks against the Washington Commanders. While Mills rushed for a touchdown last Sunday, his performance was not good enough to keep the Mills Mafia hype train going for Texans coach Lovie Smith. Thank you for listening to the Sports Update to 1 p.m. I'm Dennis Shinoli for 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.